Neil, I have to be up here so people can see me.
Stand up. We're about fair play.
So it's fun when I get to introduce these two guys because there are very people that I know and respect and enjoy as much as these two guys. Max and I worked together for, well, we've known each other for 18, 19 years and worked together for 5. And he's just a wonderful guy, and beyond that, amazingly talented and great customer, great with customers. Derek, I've known for 4 years. Come up with 4 years. He just had his 3rd anniversary on Indy, which is really fun. Both really talented guys, great amount of knowledge on customer support and service, so I think you'll enjoy this session.
Great, thank you, Andy, and welcome. And so how many of you saw the movie last night? Everybody go out and see the Star Wars? I was surprised, I had some conversations. How many of you had never seen the movie before? And you call yourself geeks. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Anyway, so we are Derek and Max. I'm Max. This is Derek. In addition to all the wonderful things that Andy said, we are both coincidentally motorcyclists. I'm the safe motorcyclist, he's the reckless one, and we're here to talk about onboarding new clients, getting a new client and making sure that you can keep them as a happy customer for the long haul and really grow and build your business.
And everything we're preaching here, we don't think this is like, hard facts. This is the only way to do this. I think what we generally want to talk about is these are better practices. I'm sure there's plenty of knowledge out there in the crowd that is also just as good as what we're talking here, and we'd love to hear it and have you participate in this and provide examples along with what we're talking about. But we'll be giving examples of what we know we've used and what has worked for us. But this is always an evolving process. You're constantly learning and changing your style.
Definitely. So. We start off, you get a call from a customer, they found you maybe from a referral of some sort, and where do you go next? What do you do? So what we're going to focus on today, this first session this morning, is that intake call, that initial contact where you find out about the customer, you make sure that you're conveying what you're about to the customer so that they know how you do business and things like that. And then the second step, the second phase, what we always used to do, I say used to because I am no longer a consultant. I did consulting for almost 20 years, but now I've got a day job and work for a startup company. So the second step in the process is the evaluation, finding out the real nitty-gritty about the customer and what their business is like and what you need to do for them.
So during the first call, obviously, as you're talking with this client, this is a constant information gathering. You always want to be, sort of steering the conversation and pulling the information that you need from the client, and also establishing a rapport with them. Showing that you know what you're talking about, and establishing your beliefs and ideals as far as technology goes, so that you can provide them with the proper solution, and then establishing trust with them so that they're able to give you the information that you need in order to provide the proper solutions for them going forward.
Yeah, and you'll find that this is kind of a recurring theme that we keep coming back to in this talk, is the idea of establishing a rapport with the customer, building trust, and then also showing your value to the customer, illustrating to them that you are worth what they're going to pay you for. So that's really the important piece. So that first piece is the call, when the customer calls up, and it's usually when things are really going south for the customer. They rarely call you with, hey, today's the day, I want to start working with an IT expert and really do my IT right. It's usually when things are really bad. They're tired of their server crashing or their Wi-Fi doesn't work, and it was the last straw. They finally decided, okay, let's cut the crap and get a professional in here. So at that point, here's where your first opportunity is to demonstrate competency to the client, to make that contact and find out what they need, but also make sure that they know you understand what they're saying. But you have to, when you're listening to this first call, you've got to make sure that you're focusing on the end results. Not just what the customer's telling you, not just, hey, I need you to fix this problem for me, but focus on, I want you to be able to do this. I want you to be able to run your business. I want you to be able to be successful in your everyday work.
And as Max said, the reason they picked up the phone initially is probably because they're in some sort of a panic state. There's a problem at hand right now. Shut up and listen. It's a big part of establishing a rapport and trust with the client. You want to just let them vent. Let them tell you about how awful their IT is currently. Start to empathize with them. You've seen things like this before. You've been down that road, but there's a better solution for you, and you're going to help them find it. And sort of as they're venting to you, sort of probe and steer the conversation to start pulling the information that you need out of them. Try and start leading the conversation into a more information gathering conversation. Once they've vented and got their frustrations out.
Right. I know there's a temptation with those first calls to get the first few details about what their problem is and to say, oh yeah, I know how to do this. Oh, what we got to do is get rid of that first generation airport and we'll upgrade your Wi-Fi and we'll be fine. And it's like, step back, let them continue. It's really important for the customer to feel like they're being heard. So that's why we emphasize, just shut up and listen.
You have to let them clear their brains so they're ready to start listening to things.
Absolutely.
They're not in this frustrated state.
Yeah. So the next step is you need to now start explaining your approach, how you do your business. Here's where you explain your philosophy, how you approach problem solving and developing an IT infrastructure for your customers. Just emphasize your experience. Again, you're proving your value to the customer. All right. So, but while you're doing this, while you're making your pitch about your business and your expertise, again, tie it back to what the customer's asking for. So if you've got expertise in Wi-Fi and their problems with Wi-Fi, talk about that. If their problem is their servers out of hard drive space, talk about how you manage servers and some of your other customers that you've dealt with and the types of situations you've encountered. So again, putting the customer at ease, making them understand that you hear them, you understand their problems, and you can provide value. You can make it worth their while in time and in the money that they're going to be paying you. All right?
And it's important up front now, early on in the conversation, you want to set your expectations properly. If anyone's familiar with the triangle of two choices, you can only have two of these. Actually, this is the triangle of two choices for dating.
That's right. Never mind. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are the tech examples. Basically, the client will most likely, for any solution you're going to put in place, they can basically pick any two of these options. If they're looking for all three, they're probably dreaming.
Yeah. And most customers are going to come to you and say, I want it quick, cheap, and good. And you need to really explain to them why it's virtually impossible to do all three. There is no quick solutions. There are no truly cheap solutions. You've got to make sure that they understand, again, emphasizing the value and your expertise to them. And so while you're also doing that, you need to be able to start setting boundaries with the customer. All right? Make sure that you know and you let the customer know areas that are not in your skill set. All right? So if this is a customer, if you're a purely Mac consultancy and they come in and they say, okay, half of our machines are Windows and I need you to upgrade them from Windows 7 to Windows 10, that may not be in your wheelhouse. That may not be an area that you're comfortable doing. You may be taking on a project that's too large. If you're a one-man shop and they come with you and say, hey, we need to deploy 1,000 iPads, that may be beyond the scope of what you're ready to do. All right? So you need to be clear with the customer what you can and can't do, and be honest with yourself, too. Sometimes it's tempting to look at that big project and say, wow, here's a serious paycheck that I can cash in on. But you need to also set some limits so are clear with the customer what you can do, what you can't do, and what you won't do. All right, so again, there are sometimes they'll come to you with some crazy science experiment. And if that's not what you want to do, you need to be ready to say that.
Exactly. Not, realize that going into this, not every client may be your client. As you're listening to the needs and wants of this person, if you can immediately tell that what they're asking for is a total pipe dream space case, this might not be your client. Listen to the things that they're sensitive to, and listen to the things that are really exciting them, and sort of probe your questions around those things to sort of feel them out and decide whether this project is something you can actually take on and support ongoing and have it work successfully. Listen for things in the conversation like rate sensitivity, or find out if the client has certain big projects going on right now, and maybe right now might not be the proper time for them to be engaging your help. If they're in the middle of something, they have a deadline, and they're talking about doing a whole server restructure, right now might not be the right time. Maybe they would want to re-engage you a few months down the road.
Yeah, and it's also the time to, as Andy has said, was listen to the level of crazy. All right, how many of you have gotten customers where you call up and you hear the story and they're just out there, they're complete whack jobs, and they've got some really bizarre notion of what IT can and can't do, and they want you to come along for the ride. And they may have the money, they may be willing to pay you whatever your rate is, but do you really want to go down that road? Do you really want to engage with this person and make yourself crazy in trying to deal with this person who's got their own bizarre ideas of what good IT is? So there's a lot of value in saying no, or saying no thank you.
Because you're basing the reputation of yourself or the consultancy on whether or not you're actually taking on this project and success of it. So
yeah. And certainly these days with social media and stuff, a bad customer experience can really turn into a serious backlash against you. So a lot of times it's better to nip something in the bud. If your gut is telling you run away, it might be time to run away. Yeah. So you've done the first phone call. You've gotten the lay of the land. You've gotten an overview of what the customer needs. Now it's time to start thinking about, okay, let's get together and actually get the details. All right. So while you're preparing the customer for that first visit, make sure you're clear with them about setting expectations. So there may be things that you're going to find while you're on site that are beyond what you initially talked about. So tell the customer there's possibility of scope creep. All right. But again, this is all about emphasizing the value that you bring, and that is really where being successful with engaging customers pays off, is emphasizing that value.
So you've done the initial intake call, you've gathered all the information you can over the phone, and now it's time to go on site. And realize that going into this, you want to assume that this is not going to be this one and done visit. It's not just, I'm the plumber, there's a leak in the basement, I'm here to fix that.
Yeah.
You're trying to establish an ongoing relationship with this client.
What was your analogy?
You're going to treat this is eHarmony, this is not Tinder. You're not looking for the one night stand here with the client. This is a relationship for the long haul.
Yeah. And after that first phone call, after you've scheduled the appointment, make sure you send them a follow-up email. Verify that, okay, here's when I'm agreed to coming, here's what we talked about, here's what I want to investigate. Let them know, again, that you are engaged and you're building that trust with the client by continually keeping your lines of communication open. And when it's time for you, the actual appointment, it's time to show up early. All right, if you've got a 2 o'clock appointment, be there at 1:55. You don't want to be there a half hour early, but you want to be prompt, which means a few minutes early. So when the customer says, oh, hey, let's get going. And so you can start right on time.
Also, think about the image that you want to present. There's not necessarily a right or wrong image. It's just, how you want to present your consultancy, your business. Do you want to be, the laid-back IT guy? Do you want to be a very professional person? Do you want to be sort of the geek squatty kind of consultant? It's just, pick your image and then commit to it.
Yeah, we know consultants who, we've got a friend who wears a big pith helmet and a huge backpack everywhere he goes, but that's his image, and he sticks with it, and it works for him. But it may not work for you. But the other thing to think about is if you have a team of consultants, of engineers that are going out to customers, you may not want to have one wacky, fun-loving guy and another button-down, serious guy, and have the customer having to deal with both of those. Because the customer may be thrown for a loop when the alternative engineer shows up and there's like, wait a minute, where's my happy-go-lucky, fun IT consultant? And the serious guy says, oh, he's busy today, and I'm here to help you. They might not be happy. So make sure that the image you're presenting to your customers is generally consistent. With that said, I think everyone's personality is different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that being said, you could use that to your advantage because you might have one person's style that works better with a certain client, rather than another client. So you can use that as a strategic positioning for your evaluations in business.
Definitely. So you're getting ready to show up. You've showed up on time. It's important for you though to be ready. All right. If you're a larger consultancy, more than one person, if you didn't make that intake call, make sure you have all the information that was collected during that intake call. You've got all the notes. You've got all your gear, everything you need, your cables, your laptop, your phone, your iPad, and make sure everything's charged. Nothing looks worse than walk in and say, hey, can I plug in here for a few minutes while we talk? Be ready to hit the ground running. And then while you're there, in addition to having all your information, all the notes, you know what's expected, make sure you have an open mind. I think that's an important piece of this because inevitably you're going to discover things that were never discussed, that the customer may not even be conscious of, that they need to be paying attention to. But when you're in there, you need to be able to pivot, be able to change speed and handle whatever gets thrown at you. Right? So you're on site, you're starting to work with the customer.
You're starting on the ground, you want to make sure you're absolutely documenting every single thing you're seeing. Hopefully before you've gone in, you've set up some sort of a template that will cue you as to things that you need to be looking for constantly. We literally leave no stone unturned. You want to be looking at the issues that the client initially brought you in for, but you also want to be, the client might be pointing you, here's the problem over here, but you want to see everything. Show me the closet, show me the computer, show me everything that's going on, and take pictures as well. That way, when you get to what we're going to talk about in our next session, putting in the proposal, when you get back to your office, you can reconstruct the entire workspace environment, and you won't have to call again to ask follow-up questions or get information that you didn't get when you were on site. You can rebuild the entire workspace environment and put together your proposal properly.
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize the importance of the notion of a template for collecting customer data. How many of you use some sort of standardized form or template to keep your customer information in? And it doesn't matter. It can be, spreadsheet of some sort. It can just be text files. Whatever works for you. Could be a database. But make it consistent and start making that a habit because it pays dividends way down the road. So if you change a team member, they're able to look at a customer and say, oh, here's all the notes, here's all the IP information I need to understand this existing customer. And by looking back at all this information you have about your existing customers, now when you go into a new customer, you know what you need to gather. You know where the gotchas are going to be, and you want to make sure you're filling out those pieces of the template so that you have all that information. So as we were saying before, this is about demonstrating competency, proving to the customer that you know what you're doing, that you're the right expert to call, that they were smart to pick up the phone and reach out to you in the first place. So just like that intake call, this is the time to shut up and listen. So you're on site, they're walking you around, showing you some of the things that are going on. Go ahead and just let them vent again, because again, this is probably the first time they've had somebody with expertise to look at their systems. All right? And make sure you're empathizing with them. Make sure you're saying, yes, I understand. That would be a real pain in the ass. Make sure they know you understand what their problems are. Don't try to gloss it over and say, oh, dumb user, that's so easy to fix. And also, you want to ask questions. You want to be polite, but probe to get to the root of the problem. All right, so guided questioning to get to the source of where these issues are, and also understand the full scope of what's going on. They, again, may be showing you one symptom that's wrong with their infrastructure, but you need to understand the whole layout so that you know what's really going on.
So then after you've worked with either the principal or the sole proprietor, get a tour of the entire work environment. You want to see things. Like literally look absolutely everywhere. Look at all the workstations. Look at the printers, network. Go look at the networking closet. Examine things like the age and the state of the networking closet. How dusty is it in there? That'll give you there's an immediate idea as to how much love that the network gets. Find out about their ISP, how old the hardware is. Where's that big shoebox or giant bin of all those old wires and stuff? Where is that? Let's see what all you've got.
Do you all ask to see the junk box? Did everybody do that? Ask for the junk box. Everyone's got one. There's a box full of cables. I don't know what this is, but I keep it anyway. Every customer's got one.
What about some of their soft systems? What about email contacts and calendars? What about how they're using different mobile devices and phones? Do they have anything? Do they have any subscription services? Cloud-hosted data, subscriptions like Adobe Creative Cloud, Office, and then do they have
domain information?
Yes, domain information as well.
If they've got their own domain, find out what their registrar is. Find out where the hosting company is, what the DNS settings are. Do they have the passwords and the credentials to access this information? It's the worst thing of having a customer that you've engaged for months, years, whatever, all of a sudden they call, hey, my website's down, my email's not working. You know why? Did my domain registration expire? This was on you. You should have seen this well in advance. So
ask them for any existing documentation that they may have if they've worked with a previous consultant, or if they have some sort of rudimentary way for initially storing their information and passwords.
Definitely, yeah. The spreadsheet with the passwords in it. Give me a copy of that.
Or the contact card.
Yeah, but yeah, it's all in contact.
It's all in the notes too.
Right. So then, after you talk to the person who contacted you in the first place, make sure you talk to the users as well. Because very often, how many of you have seen a situation where you get a completely different story when you talk to the end users, right? All right, they've got their own pain points. They've got their own needs, their own wants. Maybe the owner doesn't realize that this user's machine is dog slow and they need to reboot it every half hour. Make sure that you understand what the workflows are of the users. Again, these are areas that may not be documented anywhere, and even the principal, the owner of a company, may not really fully understand how a particular employee does their job. If they've been in a position for years, they may be doing things in such a way that the owner just assumes it's happening and working properly, but they don't realize it's a very manual process that this one employee is doing. And it might be another opportunity for you. So really probe in as much as you can to find out about how these people are doing their jobs.
And while you're doing all this probing, though, the constant thing is to make sure you're not neglecting the original problem, the reason that they initially picked up that phone and called you. Make sure that when they came in and they said, this is that problem that I called you for. It's right over here. Make sure you're taking time to really focus on that. And see if you can find the root cause of that. If it is something that you start to find yourself in the weeds and it's going to take longer than this initial visit, set that expectation and stop there and let them know that you'll have to do some more you'll have to do some more testing, some more research on this to figure out the exact cause of that problem. But it's very important to focus on their initial needs. That's how they're going to feel that they've been heard, that you're listening to them and responding to what they need and want.
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's about proving competency, it's about providing value, and it's about building that trust. So all these things work towards that. So you're coming to the end of your visit now, and you've gotten most of the information you think you need. You've started to develop that rapport, build the trust. So make sure you close this out in a graceful way. Try not to be rushed. I know a lot of us have busy schedules. You've got one appointment, you've got X amount of time to do the evaluation, and you've got to get to that next appointment. But it's important not to rush leaving and walking out the door. So explain to the customer what's going to be coming next. Make sure you review what you've discovered. Say, okay, here's what we talked about, here's the things that I found, here's some issues that I think we need to be looking at and addressing. You want to keep things fairly high level, but at the same time, make sure the customer understands that you've got a good picture of what's going on in their business. All right? Make sure you leave them feeling optimistic, you're conveying the impression that, yeah, I can solve this, we can do this for you. All right, but also be realistic. Let them know, all right, this is going to be a tough nut to crack. This is going to be a hard problem, but we can do it for you. All right? So tell them that you can solve their problems. Make them believe that you can solve their problems. Sometimes you may need to bring in outside help and other resources, but again, hopefully you've teased this information out before you committed to the onboarding. Remember we talked about knowing when to say no thank you. But if you do need to bring in extra help, that's fine if you know how to do that. And then, but the other next thing to leave the customer with is, what's the next step? What's the timeline for when you're going to follow up? All right? So it may be, okay, I need 2 days to digest this, and then I'll let you know when I'll have a proposal. Or it may be, I will have a proposal for you in 7 days. Whatever your answer is, make sure you give them that information, let them know what the next steps are going to be, so that they know where they stand. All right? And when do they expect to hear from you? All right. A lot of us also, when we're wrapping up on these initial evaluations, if you're a lot of our businesses are structured, you're actually paid for your evaluation. So don't forget to get paid. There's been a handful of times where I've rushed out of a customer and I'm like, oh dang, I forgot to get that check. So get a check or leave the invoice, whatever it takes, but make sure that, again, you're emphasizing your value, and getting paid is part of emphasizing your value. So make sure you're doing that. And then, of course, thank the customer. Let them know that you appreciate them taking the time with you.
So, in summary, we've conducted a successful client intake call. We've learned about their issues. We've learned about the business. We've described our business, how we like to work, and what our ideals are. And we've set our expectations, what we can do, what we can't do, what we don't want to do at all. We've gone on site, performed a great evaluation, gathered hopefully all the information that we know so that we can put together a successful proposal, and we've established trust and rapport with the client. We've shown our competency and shown our value going forward so that they're ready to now hear what we have to say and what we think they need to do.
So at this point, we want to open this up more for discussion and dialogue about this process. As Derek and I were preparing our presentation today, it kept striking me that this is stuff that most of us do every day or frequently in our business, but at the same time, I also get the impression we don't spend a lot of time stopping to think about what is the actual process we go through. How do we do these things that have become almost instinctual over years? So I think there's a lot of value in really outlining the process and trying to document it and making it more structured, making it more formalized. Even though, again, when you're communicating with your customer, make it really easygoing and informal. But you want to make sure that you're consistent all the time. So, any questions, any comments? Yeah. Do we want, Sean? Do we want to get a mic for questions and stuff?
We don't have an extra one.
We don't have an extra mic. Derek, would you mind jumping around and I'll MC?
I went to a similar seminar to this once, and they said before you should start, you should always plan your exit strategy. I'm wondering what your opinion is of building in offboarding in addition to onboarding at the beginning.
How to build in offboarding? Huh. Well, I think that's an interesting concept because that kind of assumes that at some point you're going to lose this customer. Or you're going to retire, yes. Well, I think the key to that is the documentation piece. So that, again, you're working from templates for how you're storing your client data, and you're hopefully applying structured processes. Okay, I'm using the same recommendations for an email service for this customer. I'm using the same types of server infrastructure when I build a server. And you've got templates not only in paper form, but also in sort of infrastructure templates that you roll out to various types of customers, so that if it's time for you to sell your business, when it's time to retire, you can say, okay, this customer has email, servers, and networking, and this customer has A, B, and C. And you can sell this business off to someone else, and they'll be able to take these customers and continue being successful with them. If the customer decides to leave, and they say, well, we decided to part ways, we're bringing in our own IT person, we've hired your consultant out from under you, whatever it is, you should hand over all their documentation, and you've got it all documented. And again, this is where you demonstrated your competency and value by saying, sure, here it is, here's all your information. Hopefully another consultant can take this and run with it and not be scrounging around trying to find the details. Other comments on that, or other questions?
When you talk about documentation and templates, how detailed are your templates? In other words, for example, someone calls in, we're having a Wi-Fi problem. Do you have a template to basically troubleshoot that, or is it just like a help desk ticket type of thing where you just have blank fields and you just start typing? Because then that becomes a very long task afterwards. For example, you try to document everything you saw after you left that client. Do you have like a bullet point type template or a checkbox template?
So when I'm talking about templates, generally what I'm referring to is what we've always talked about is the customer IP, information about the client. So, address, and then basic information about the customer, who their ISP is, what networking hardware they have, what the SSIDs and passwords are, and right down to domain information, who the domain registrar is, credentials for that, all that information, workstation information. It can be as simple as just a large text file, and you've got a template with headings in it that then as you flush it out and you get the details, you fill it out. Or it can be more complex. There are database systems, online tools that you can subscribe to that will have very structured forms for all this. But you want to keep it obviously in a very secure manner. But this is the reference for you, for your teammates, and then ultimately if you do need to leave this customer, to return back to the customer. This is the customer's data. But then the other half of your question then is, okay, I get the call or even that initial request, here's the problem. That's again, depends on your own business, your own consultancy. Do you want to have a ticketing system? Do you want to have like a Zendesk or Freshdesk instance spun up that either you're entering the tickets yourself or you're having your customers email you and they're generating tickets? Because that then creates a paper trail for how each individual problem is solved. Or do you want to keep it more informal? And it's just like, okay, in the invoice, I got a call about fixing the Wi-Fi, I made a 2-hour visit, I troubleshoot the Wi-Fi, replaced one of the access points, and I rearranged where things were, and now everything works. That's really kind of up to you, but I would tend to keep those pieces of information separate. If you did replace a router when you were, or an access point, obviously update the IP info. But the problems and the solutions and the work you've done, that's really more record keeping as well as invoicing, tracking your time and work versus just the basic knowledge about the customer. So they're very closely related, but they're separate.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think to your question, the template isn't necessarily designed around the issue at hand. It's more around the general information that you need to understand about the system in order to then troubleshoot the issue. So you're not necessarily, in the template, you're not asking about things like about the Wi-Fi problem. You want to know more, you want to know the network locations of the router and the access points. You want to have login information for these. You want to understand the usernames and passwords and things so that you can get into these systems to then do the troubleshooting.
Right, yeah. It's having that at your fingertips that's going to make you nimble and able to solve the problems more quickly. Because if you have to like scramble to find the password to change the settings on the access points every time there's a Wi-Fi problem, you're not going to look like a competent professional. It's like you need to have this information and not rely on the customer to keep it for you, because we all know the customers, if they have it at all, it's in very bad shape. And most of the time they don't have it, right?
And the reason they brought you in is because they don't want to worry about their IT. You're the one that's doing the IT for you.
Yeah.
How do you deal with Apple ID passwords? When it's something a customer, I keep on running for those because they keep on forgetting their passwords, so they reset it, and of course they don't let me know that they changed it.
Sure.
They assume that I know, but I don't. So I have to run, and this person isn't there, and then I call them. So much time spent. Where should I bill him for this?
Yeah. Did Derek go on?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of that comes down to, if you can, document things like the security questions, knowing the answers, picking security questions that have objective answers, not subjective answers. Pick the question that says, what was your address when you grew up? Not what was your favorite thing in October of wherever. It's like nobody knows that. Like no one's going to remember that. Think of things that don't change. But yeah, as far as you're concerned, when you give you the password, it just goes back to establishing the rapport with the customer and establishing that trust that they're willing to hand you the keys. Because there's certain things that you need the keys for.
Yeah. And I would add to that particular kind of problem is an opportunity for you to introduce to the customer good password management. I mean, we've always been big advocates of using 1Password as a password management tool. And with the latest version of 1Password, they now have 1Password for teams.
And for families.
And for families, exactly. Which basically means shared vaults. So they can share a vault with you, and it's like, okay, did you update your Apple ID in 1Password when you changed it? Oh no, well let's, at least together we can work through resetting it. So, Andy, do you want to comment on that?
Just general thinking on client info, and this is something that we've talked about internally for years. You absolutely must store your client information encrypted. Your laptop, in transit, at rest, 1Password, whatever you're using, you can't ever expose it in any way, shape, or form, because if you do, and they find out about it, your practice is over.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a standard thing, but
just one point on that as well. I think with the increase of multi-factor authentication as well, we just can't know our clients' Apple ID passwords anymore. And if we do, they're effectively useless, because if they are asking us for the client, the password, they're just going to get a 2FA request anyway. So what we've been doing is really working with our clients to understand, to help them understand the value of having that, knowing your password, making sure it's a secure password, because this is your data. And it's actually, we've had to have that conversation about, IT is becoming more of a shared responsibility. You have things, more tied to your personal Apple ID, and you've got your kid's photo stream on there. So we don't want that information. We're happy to reset it, but we just don't want it, and it's less useful to us anyway.
yeah, exactly. It's a liability for you to have it, and it's important for them to be able to manage it again. So again, it's a business opportunity for you to provide training, provide that value. So it's more than just, do they trust you with their Apple ID? It's, are you providing them value by improving their experience overall?
So one thing that I've done to accommodate that is I actually have one that's just for IT purposes and manage it that way. And your personal one's your personal one. Do whatever the hell you want with it. If I happen to know it or you want to tell it to, share it, okay, fine. But for the IT purposes and doing IT purchases for the company or the individual, that's one that we both know. And typically you can get control of that one. And you're not, you're not infringing on anybody's privacy at that point.
Right, if your customer is a family, that's one thing, but if you're working with a business, that business should probably have a dedicated Apple ID for the business, especially if they're doing any kind of MDM, where you're going to need a DEP Apple ID. So yeah, then you're starting to get into Apple IDs, and in that case, I often recommend setting up an alias or setting up a group in G Suite that multiple people have access to that email account. So it's not just tied to an individual, because if that individual leaves the company, now you're going to start from scratch.
Hi, I'm curious to see if anyone has had any luck finding any tools that they're using when they're doing assessments on site to help maybe automate the data collection process regarding the network. I know like Network Detective is a product on the market, if anyone has used that. Obviously Watchman is something that could be used, but it's pretty involved as far as like getting that installed on every workstation. So just trying to see if like, we've just been starting to do larger assessments and we're trying to find ways to make that process more efficient.
I know on site I'll generally use iNet and do like a network scan to at least pick up the amount of, get a rough overview of the network, and you can see how many clients you got on there, so you see what kind of devices you have on the network. And then also, if you do get a chance to get hands-on with client machines, if you make sure ARD is enabled, you can fire up ARD and do a scan, and you can get most of the system information you need to put together a decent map of the technology setup.
Yeah.
You find out interesting things that by showing like 3389 things like that.
Right. And map. And
November map.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's a GUI.
Cool.
I'll switch it, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, this is a number of Apple, and map.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have iOS counterparts too, so if you're walking around, you have a nice mobile app and it usually sync back to your
Beard?
Other questions, comments, ideas,
Okay, so just take.
killer solutions?
Showing the setting up.
Was this useful? Did people find this information helpful? And as I said, I felt like this is a lot of what we're doing is, intuitive, but we do this all the time, but at the same time, I thought there was some value in outlining it, codifying it, and discussing it. Yeah. No question, comment?
What's been your experience with like having people for like rationalizing people pay for their assessments? Like people think, well, I don't want to pay for anything, so like a proposal, and maybe that's just the people that I'm doing. What do you guys think?
Right, and that's definitely an interesting business decision.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of consultants that will be happily do the evaluation for no charge, and then other consultants insist on getting paid for that time. There's, Andy has a very strong opinion about this, I'm sure. But my feeling is that this is the first opportunity that you can demonstrate value, that your time is worth something. So if your time is worth something, you should be paid for that.
Yeah, this is all right up front, setting your expectations.
Yeah.
If they realize, you're no matter what it is that you're doing, your time costs money.
Yeah.
I think it sets a precedent, number one, about you as a professional and an expert. And
Yeah.
number two, when you give away your expertise for free, it devalues what you're giving away, and so it has much less perceived value.
Yeah. Yeah, all of us have been longtime members of the Apple Consultants Network and attended many Apple Consultants meetings at Macworld back in the day. And I remember years and years ago, Andy and I attended one, and it was a presentation about the value in raising your rates and how that actually raising your rates counterintuitively brought in more business. And it took us a while to really understand that, yeah, when you do that, you raise the value of your own expertise by doing so. Even though you're more expensive, not everyone is going to necessarily go for the cheapest option. And they may want to go for the more experienced option, the one with the more expertise. And so sometimes having a higher rate can help signal that to a customer. All right, so I think that's, Andy, is that about time?
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much for spending it morning with us. Derek and I will be embarking on part 2 in just a few minutes.